Mahe and I, Favour, nothing missing, nothing but broken, nothing absent from your lives that are needed. All right, so, excuse me. I've had a few people ask me to do a podcast, bring you up to date on my humble opinion about things. Well, I don't give opinions. I either know or I don't. If I'm reasonably certain, I will say that. I'll give you a percentage. I'm 99% sure. I'm 80% sure. I'm 40% sure. Whatever the case might be, right? Obviously, a lot of things that are going on right now, you cannot be 100% sure about because that's just the way it is. Kind of sucks. But there's so much backwash and backwater and muddying of the water that you have to really dig. And then, you got to have trusted resources. Well, it's really hard to have trusted resources when half your agencies like Reuters and other institutions are owned by people who have an agenda and have been caught many times over the last 30 years lying through their damn teeth. All right? If you take anything from AP or Reuters as fact and you don't check it, shame on you. It's that simple. Now, right off the bat, I got to say this is a video podcast that's going to air on YouTube. So if you happen to catch me on my regular podcasts that go out from Spreaker to all the different feeds, if you want to see me on video, I've done several conversations that have been video podcasts on YouTube that I forgot to convert to audio and put on my regular podcasts. I'm sorry, you all. Probably dumb as heck, too, because who knows at what point in time YouTube is going to say, oh, well, you can't say that and take it off. I mean, they change their terms of service. You have no idea what they are. And then all of a sudden, something that you said 10 years ago is no longer acceptable. So they delete it. At least with my Spreaker site, they don't edit any of my stuff. And that's the reason why I tell everybody the same thing every time. If you're catching me on Podbean or Podcast Addict or Spotify or wherever you're catching my podcasts, you probably have missed some because my homepage is Spreaker. I've remained loyal to Spreaker for years because they don't edit my podcasts. I mean, I do my Just Plain Ornery Laugh podcasts on Spreaker, and they're pretty adult, and they've never once tried to edit it. Same thing with my regular podcast when I'm talking about things that I'm not allowed to say anywhere else. Like all that time I was talking about the Jabberwocky, the injections. All the time I was talking about, HIV, SARS-CoV-2, and where it was made. I find it really funny that they still have to have the red herrings out there. Oh, it's from Wuhan. No, it's not. It's from right here in North Carolina. The contract was signed in 2015 between Ralph Barrick and Fauci at the NIH and the pharmaceutical company. Don't believe me. Don't take my word for it. I never want anybody to believe me or disbelieve me. You want to find out about the contract? Just type in Glenn Beck. You want Ralph Barrick and the NIH, and it'll pull up the video. Probably have to go to BitChute or Rumble. I doubt that it's on YouTube. Surely they would have deleted it off of YouTube, right? But you can find Glenn Beck presenting you the contract that was signed between Ralph Barrick and one of the pharmaceutical companies and our friend Fraudchi Weasel Fauci for development of the novel virus and the injections in 2015, you all. Not 2020, not 2021, 2015, 2016. And then, you know, interestingly too, is in 2018, there was a rebranding of basic flu tests, you know, because they only shoot for a very small sequence of proteins. That's all they can do with those quick tests. And the accuracy is zero. I mean, you have false positives and false negatives on those tests that their false positives and false negatives make it a negative, period. There is no positive result. I'm trying to, it's weird to say. All right, their false positives and the false negatives negate the test completely. Why? Because a PCR is not a test. It's a way of expanding the volume of a sample so that you can use it in a lab. You know, there's a reason why they killed off the inventor before they did this. Sudden heart attacks, you know. But anyway, what I was talking about, if you want to see me, then you can catch this on YouTube if they leave it up. That's always questionable. I'm just saying, it's always questionable. If you speak the truth, you're going to get edited, and you're going to get copyright strikes or content violations or whatever, because they don't want you to speak the truth. Especially if you know something. If you're just out there spewing and sputting and guessing, then they might let you do it, because you're by not speaking what is actually fact, and you're just guessing, or you're giving a scenario that they're okay with, then that creates another red herring for them to hide behind. Back to what I said, the red herring. I find it really interesting that they keep after reiterating that this came out of Wuhan, when I proved immediately, January 1st of 2020, I did my report to the person who asked me for my old command to do my report. My report on January 1st was Ralph Barrington G-Ling in North Carolina, delivered to the NIH somehow. Now, how it got to Wuhan, it's because G-Ling carried it with her. Something else y'all don't realize, and I've talked about this before, is what about them 86 samples that went missing from Fort Detrick under Redfield's watch? You know, I found it interesting in 2020 that they brought Redfield out, right? Because I knew he was the bastard behind the anthrax. Now, the person associated with him is the one that ended up dead, but Redfield is the one that was behind the anthrax. No other way to say it. He was the one in charge. He's the one that had access. There's no other way that the anthrax that got delivered to shut everybody up about the Patriot Act and the Homeland Security Act, there is no way that Redfield wasn't behind it. And then we know that Burks and Redfield are the ones that caused Gulf War syndrome. Gulf War syndrome is a toxic reaction to the injections that they were given going into Iraq. Conveniently enough, the Whitewater paperwork from Clinton and the records for Gulf War syndrome were both in the Murrah Federal Building when it blew up. Purely coincidence, right? Kill two birds with one stone. It's just like hiding the Bayer Monsanto, same company, different name, hiding the Bayer Monsanto paperwork on the Agent Orange for so long. Except for they didn't just blow up a building to get rid of all the evidence like they did with the Murrah building. Anyway, So that kind of covers that. If you want to see this live and you're listening to me on a podcast repeater site or on my podcast site, just go to YouTube. As long as it's up, same name, Raven Kiefer. If you're on YouTube, hello everybody. And if you're on my regular podcast sites and you're listening to this, I have video conversations with me that I've done in December and January on YouTube. And I forgot to make audio files of them and put them up on my regular podcast site so they would go out to everybody. I apologize for that. I was busy with music. I admit it. All right, so if y'all been paying attention to me, I was talking about Nipah last summer. And last summer, I was talking about Nipah in India. Well, Nipah has all of a sudden hit the headlines. And I'm not sure why it's hitting the headlines, except for now in South America and Southeast Asia, it's summertime, right? The islands, Africa, South America, it's summertime. They're still trying to attribute it to the version that's out there. They're trying to attribute to bats, just like they tried to attribute the version of SARS that was attached to the COVID as bat related. Y'all, I have said this multiple times in multiple podcasts. Yes, SARS and Nipah and Hendra and what the hell was the other one called? SARS, Nipah, Hendra, and went completely out of my head because I haven't seen it for a while. That's a shame, man. I can't believe and my memory being what it is weird that I get these weird lapses when it's not something that I've been working on for a while. It's the way my brain works, you all. I can remember a lot of stuff, but if I'm not using that part of the Rolodex, it takes me a little while to find it. But anyway, SARS, Nipah, and Hendra are all derived. Notice how I said that. They're all derived from parasitic pathogens that come from bats. The problem is they're no longer that anymore. If you look at the natural variant and you look at the variant that we've seen, the variants that we see are like the coronavirus that came out with the HIV SARS-CoV-2. It was so far off the virus clock. I mean, I said it back then, and I've said it multiple times. If you look at the HIV SARS-CoV-2 that came out, right, the coronavirus, normally they will be like over here, and this is 2 o'clock, and this is, I'm not sure if this is going to be backwards for you all, but this is 2 o'clock, and this is 5 o'clock. That's where your flu strains reside, okay? This one was way over here. So you know it's man-made. It's nothing that, there's no way it can naturally progress. A very good example is I've talked about Ebola. Ebola has progressed from a parasitic-derived disease to a bloodborne pathogen to an airborne pathogen. That's not how it works, you all. It's just not how it works. So somebody's doing something. But anyway, Nipah is in the headlines now. If you get on YouTube and type in Nipah global or Nipah current, you'll find some people talking about Nipah. You know, they're going to tell you it came from bats, and they're going to tell you not to eat from fruit and this and that and the other. But, and I agree that if you don't want the natural strain, you should avoid bats. You should avoid fruit that they've eaten on, because it does get carried through the parasite in the saliva, and you will get the parasites. But I'm just saying, yes, the natural variant. But what we're seeing appear in Brazil and Peru and the Amazon and Africa and in the warm parts of Southeast Asia is not the novel strain. Same thing with India, for that matter. It's not the novel strain. It's the engineered strain that came out of the CDC lab. And ironically, the original SARS outbreak was right outside the CDC lab in India that was experimenting with SARS. It's like Hinder, the one no, the other one is the one that affects camels. Like, damn, why can't I remember their short abbreviation for it? Anyway, it's like Hinder, the one that affects horses. That was a experiment in Australia, at a CDC lab in Australia, CDC funded lab in Australia. That all of a sudden it killed a bunch of horses. And it's a shame those people couldn't sue the lab for their horses dying. It's just like the H5N1 variant today that jumps from chickens to people, which honestly, other than the lab in Australia where they intentionally modified that strain, I have not seen one case of it jumping from bird to human. The only place in the world, and the only time, which is one, the only time it has jumped from birds to humans, they think, was at the lab in Australia. Well, how do we know that the person who got it wasn't exposed to it in the lab in a more concentrated form? Not from the birds, but from inside the lab itself. There's no way to know that. And there's no access to those papers. I still am reasonably certain that it was exposure to a concentrated variant because he was working with the birds. I would reasonably think that it was exposure to a concentrated variant, not exposure to the birds. But it has allowed them to hide the fact that they're shipping millions of pounds of birds to other countries in order to starve out Europe and the United States. Speaking of active war, do you think that maybe the burning of all those cows and all those production facilities for eggs and chickens would not be considered an active war? If you were actually, if there was a war declared between A and B, right, and A bombed the production facilities for eggs and chickens and pork and beef, would that not be qualified as an active war? As a matter of fact, it's a war crime. But it's amazing people don't think about that. And some of them didn't actually. Some of them's just bullshit. They showed you a video that wasn't accurate, and the Chinese are processing it and shipping it back home by the crate full or container full. I've said this multiple times. If you look at what we supposedly lost in beef and chicken and pork, if you look at what we supposedly lost to explosions and fires, but then you look at the documented overseas shipping of those products, then there's no way they could have had the fires and explosions and shipped that much food too. What they did is they told the American population and European population that those facilities were destroyed and they lost all the animals, or that they cold, and the weight that they supposedly lost was shipped overseas. Liars lie, you all. Why would you expect them to do anything different on any subject? Liars lie. And I'm just taking it nice and easy. I don't care how long this goes. I'm going to cover all the information. Okay, anybody ever heard of the Anti-Defamation League? This is probably what will get me taken off of YouTube. But the Anti-Defamation League was created when a man took a woman, or took a child, actually. I think she was 11 or 12. But anyway, he kidnapped her, killed her, after having sex with her. That's all I need to say. And he was about to be found guilty, because he was. And the Anti-Defamation League was formed in order to keep him from having to go to prison. That's where it originated from. Trying to get and please, folks, he's not a Jew. The guy that they have gone to, that they went to work for, was a Talmudic Sabbatine Frankist, passing himself off as a Jew. All right? There's a huge difference, and I always point this out. When you talk about Talmudic, Sabbatine Frankist, Zionist, those three terms have nothing to do with Jews. All right? Not genetically or religiously. You know, some places they're trying to make it so that if you say the word Zionist negatively, that they can ban you. I mean, good example is TikTok just got taken over by Ellison, right? TikTok just got taken over by Ellison, which means, and they've purged. They have purged anybody talking about Zionism or Israel. They've also taken over CBS. A lot of people don't know this. How can you not know that a foreign country and a political ideology called Zionism have taken over TikTok and CBS? I mean, if you're still watching stuff on TikTok and you're not aware of the $1 billion that's being spent on pro-Zionist propaganda and attacks on people who speak the truth, you got no business paying attention to me. If you did not know that the nation, well, it's not really even a nation, the British Protectorate in Palestine has taken over CBS, an American television channel, has been taken over by that little British Protectorate in Palestine. Just saying. Anyway, so the ADL has organized a body of individuals who are Zionists and citizens of that little British Protectorate. Please note, they are citizens of the British Protectorate in Palestine. They have organized a group of them, according to Berenstein, or whatever the hell his damn name is, Greenstein. I don't pay attention to their names. The only one that I pay attention is Levine, because he is just a psychopath. They're all psychopaths if you look at their behavior. But anyway, so the ADL has been weaponized against American citizens. And here's the thing. These are foreign citizens. I don't care if you have dual citizenship. You have no business. If you have dual citizenship, you have no business in my politics or in my government offices, appointed or otherwise. If you have dual citizenship, you should automatically be disqualified from running for office because you have citizenship in a different country. That's the reason why Arnold could not run for president. Or federal office. As far as I'm concerned, yeah, you can be a dual citizen. I don't care. But if you're a dual citizen, then that means that you do not have 100% loyalty to the United States. That means that you are automatically disqualified for any office. I don't care if it's a mayor. I don't care if it's Senate, Congress, anything. Nor can you be appointed to any office like sheriff, judge, state senator, police chief. If you have dual citizenship, you have no business having any office that is a public office in the United States. I mean, it's just this common sense, you all. Come on. If I was a citizen of Russia and the United States, if I had dual citizenship between Russia and the United States, would you want me working in the White House? If I was a dual citizen between China and the United States, would you want me in the White House? If I was a dual citizen between Cuba and the United States in the 50s and 60s, would you want me in the White House? Japan, India. If I was a dual citizen with any other country in the world, would you want me in the White House as an appointed person or in the Congress or the Senate. You know, I picked Russia, although Russia's not the Russia hype. I'll get to that. But anyway, so the ADL, the Anti-Defamation League, has amassed a number of people, and their sole job 24 hours a day is to check for posts like I'm putting up right now. And if I say something bad about Israel, they sick the FBI on me. Well, first things first, the FBI has no business whatsoever taking orders from the Anti-Defamation League full of dual citizens from Israel. As a matter of fact, they ought to be investigating those dual citizens for treason and other crimes inside the United States. Just saying. You know, internet harassment is okay if you're the ADL or somebody from that particular group. Doxing somebody, swatting somebody seems to be okay if you're from that particular group of Zionists. But if I did that, I'd be in prison for 20 years. And I would be put off of Facebook or TikTok or YouTube or anything else if I targeted somebody that way. Yet these people have been doing it for months, you all. Months. Actively. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, some people who are aware like I am, I mean, you all have to remember, way back in 1999, I wrote an article called The Real Arab-Israeli Conflict. And I went all the way back to 1933 when there was a contract signed between Hitler's government and the Zionists in Germany to work together. And the deportation, voluntary, and at the expense of Germans, deportation of any Jew or Zionist who wanted to leave Germany. You can still find the ships arriving in Palestine, and the Palestinians welcoming them. Why? Because real Jews that follow the Torah have lived in the Arab countries forever, and there has been no conflict. There's a massive population of Torah-following Jews in Iran. There's a massive congregation of Christians in Iran. Same thing with Syria. Syria had Jews, Christians. They weren't Zionists, and they weren't Zionist Christians. 830 some year old Christian church was blown up by the IDF. Another one just about as old was blown up in Lebanon by the IDF, for you Christians out there. One of them had the people in it worshiping. Same thing in Syria too, by the way, in Lebanon, in the West Bank, Gaza, all over Gaza. All over what used to be Palestinian-controlled land, they destroyed Christian churches and the Christians that were in them, and the Christians that lived there. Anyway, so the ADL and other Zionist, emphasis, not Israeli, not Jewish, Zionist organizations are using the FBI and the state police and other issues, sheriffs in some cases I've seen, to attack people who will not shut up. You know, I've already said many times, you all, there is legislature in almost all 50 states at this point that speaking against Israel could get you jailed. So much for the First Amendment, right? So much for truth. Anyway, so anybody who has been paying attention, there's a ceasefire between the IDF, Israel. I hate to call it Israel because it's the British protectorate in Palestine. Kingdom of Judah is on the slave coast of Africa. You can find it on maps up to about 17 something. I think there's even a map from 1830 something, 1836, that has the Kingdom of Judah on the slave coast of Africa with Gog and Magog just north of it. I put a video up here on YouTube that shows it. But anyway, so yeah, they're using the FBI as personal attack dogs for people who refuse to give up their right to speak the truth. What is the truth? Since the ceasefire, the IDF has killed, good God, I think it's like 3,400 people. And I'm not talking about the bombs. I'm talking about just lining up on them with a rifle and shooting them. All right. And they're still blowing up refugee camps. What you're not seeing is the attacks in Lebanon, on the West Bank, and in Syria, which is interesting. They're using all this other stuff to cover up what they're doing in Syria, Lebanon, and the West Bank. The atrocities have not stopped. You know, you've got settlers going into the West Bank and killing the people who own their homes and taking their homes. Zionists, not Jews. It's never stopped. Although the TV and the media and everybody else would like you to think it has, but the atrocities continue. Okay, they give them rice and grains and beans. They give them all this stuff to eat that require water to cook. Guess what they're not allowing into the strip? The people of Gaza are not being allowed water. Giant water trucks are turned away from the gate because if they have water, they can cook their food. Hey, y'all, listening to me. Okay, I'm going to give you some oatmeal, some barley, and some rice. But I'm going to cut off 100% of your water supply. The other day, they said they had 20,000 people lined up to get medical treatment. Do you know how many they let through? 5. So that's a lie, too. Oh, we're allowing them to get medical treatment. No, they're not. They had all those people lined up and approved to go over and get medical treatment. They let 5 people out. People in the United States and Europe need to ask yourselves, why are Zionist organizations being allowed to use your police and your national institution, like here in the United States, it's the FBI? Why are Zionist organizations being allowed to use your tax-paid law enforcement to attack you? All right, Iran. You keep hearing this number, 30,000 protesters. No, they weren't. All right. I've got some damn good sources. The number is somewhere around 3,183. Now, how's that for specific? 3,183 people were killed. All right. 500 of those were military and police that were killed by activists that had been armed by the CIA and Mossad. These were not protesters. These were Mossad and CIA plants inside Iran. Weapons were smuggled into them, and they targeted the real protesters, and they targeted law enforcement and military. Several hundred emergency medical or emergency management service people. That's what we call them here in the States, emergency management services. Those are your firemen and your ambulance people. All right. And your, what do you call it? Search and rescue. 500. And this is the most current number. All right. I don't have I've heard, I can verify 500 as a rough number. Some people are saying as many as 800 to 1,000 firemen and ambulance drivers and paramedics were targeted. Okay, just saying. But anyway, we know 500 military and police. The number that they gave was 532. We know several hundred. Now, I don't have a valid solid number because they're still trying to figure out. And maybe they're not going to release it, the totals, but several hundred EMS people with fire and ambulance people who were responding to injuries were targeted by these people. If you're going to cause havoc in a country, you don't want their fire department and their medical people showing up, right? We have Pompeo in the United States saying, "We wish the protesters luck and the Mossad and CIA agents walking beside them. Good fortune." We have the Israelis, the protectorate, the British protectorate in Palestine, admitting that they had they had Mossad operatives. It's hard to disconnect the two at this point. They had Mossad operatives in the country. All right. Then we find out that the Starlink was provided by intelligence agencies in order for them to communicate. So we have all these things that are open acts of war. We have all these things that are open acts of war and admitted to between the United States, England, and the protectorate in Palestine, targeting specific groups of people within the country. If you lived in Iran, would you blow up your own churches and your own mosques? We have all these statements that have come out that they've admitted that they're the ones that done it. Now, here's the other thing. We have had 3 acts of open war by the United States and Europe against Iran since December. And people don't want to hear this, but these are open acts of war. The first one is the United States, in coordination with the Central European banks, right, fudged the Iranian currency. You know, it'd be like somebody dumping a ton of US dollars on the market and driving our prices down, forcing us into hyperinflation, which is about to happen, by the way. I don't know how they're staving it off. I really don't. We should be like Mexico or Argentina at this point. We should have to have a wheelbarrow to get a gallon of milk. Wheelbarrow full of dollar bills to get a gallon of milk, right? I'm telling you right now, the way our economy actually is, it should cost us $100 for a gallon of milk. And, $50 for a loaf of bread. But anyway, so what they did is they manipulated the currency of Iran on the markets and drove the value down so that they hit hyperinflation. That is an act of war. Okay? You ought to think about that with what's happening in the United States and what the central banks of Europe and other countries under the control of the Rothschilds are doing to the United States dollar on purpose. Right? But that economic attack was an act of open warfare against Iran in December. Okay. Then we have all the weapons and the Starlinks that were smuggled in for the protests, and the agents from CIA and Mossad that were smuggled in for the protests. That's an act of war. When you put enemy combatants on the ground and target civilians, military, and emergency medical services, and rescue fire, when you do that, that's an open act of war, right? And at the least, it's international terrorism. which is an act of war according to the terrorist laws. And then what we have seen over the last 10 days are rigged explosions. Now, Iran is passing them off as gas explosions. All right. I know better. Trust me. I shouldn't say that because everybody that says that's full of shit. But anyway, no, I will flat out tell you I am 100% certain that the explosions that we have seen in Iran over the last 10 days are targeted attacks on individuals in the scientific, military, and political community, including, again, emergency medical or emergency services personnel. All right. I don't know if they have been successful, but these are targeted attacks with explosives. I do not have any information about drones or anything like that. But these are targeted attacks on individuals that live in these places in an attempt to eliminate them and make it look like it's an accident. But the information I have is that they have found explosives. Well, it's okay if you have a gas line explode, but if you have a gas line explode and you find remnants of the explosives that were planted, that's a targeted attack. That means that 3 times since December, the United States and that little British protectorate in Palestine have committed acts of open warfare against Iran, and Iran hasn't responded yet. Emphasis yet. I find that to be interesting because they have the evidence. They could present the evidence to the United Nations and to the International Criminal Court because it is terrorism. And it's an open act of war. I can't figure out why Iran's not putting the information out. They have it. They have the data. They have the individuals. They have, and like it or don't like it, they tortured the hell out of it. And I'm going to say it. They tortured the operatives that they caught. So they know who did it, who paid for it, where they came from. They have all that evidence. Probably on video too. And they're not releasing it. However, I have it on a good authority that they have delivered the information to China and Russia. So the Chinese and the Russians are fully aware. I'm pretty sure they've delivered it to the United States. But yeah, that's 3 open acts of warfare in 2 months. If they did that, if you think about this, people here in the United States, or if you're in England or France or Germany or wherever, you think about this, okay? If you knew for a fact that they put operatives on the ground to cause the explosions and to kill people, right? And then you found out that they had smuggled in weapons and communication systems in order to subvert your government. Then you found out that they were planting explosives and targeting individuals in your scientific, military, and emergency services groups. I can tell you what would happen here in the United States. The minute they had the evidence that it was, the minute they had evidence that it was the nation of Green Tree that did this, the United States would blow Green Tree off the map. You need to think about that. And this 30,000 story, good God, I'm so sick of hearing that. I actually got a couple of people that I keep subscribed to on YouTube and a couple of other places, BitChute and Rumble being 2 others. But I've got people that I keep subscribed to that are on the propaganda train because I need to know what they're saying to people who are brainwashed and won't think and won't investigate for themselves. It's just like, I do not watch NBC, CBS, MSNBC, Fox, CNN. I don't watch any of those, right? But I will type into my search a very specific thing and see if they have any short videos that they're covering so that I can find out what the propaganda and rhetoric of the day are. I've told you many, many times, I don't waste my time on the theater of consciousness, all the distractions. I'm much more content to do comedy and my music. All right. It's good for my soul. Doing comedy and music is great for my soul. If you haven't caught my comedy, it's Raven Kiefer Laugh Podcast. It's available almost anywhere. I've got some video comedy podcast on YouTube. It's Raven Kiefer Comedy and Clips, or Clips and Comedy on YouTube. It's a playlist. I'm hoping to add some more for you. And then I've got my music. I've got 3 live sets. One of them I did way back in October. One of them I did at Thanksgiving, and one of them I did over the winter holidays, Christmas and New Year's. The first one is just like music that I figured people would dig right away. The second one was really vocally intensive, but I thought it was music that would be like on the radio. People, everybody has different tastes. So these set lists that I do have different styles of music and different sounds. But the first one was like the songs that I thought, these would get on the radio quick. People would enjoy hearing these. They're not necessarily pop, and they're not necessarily, and they're definitely not like this canned crap we've been listening to for 25 years. And then the second playlist was more vocally intensive because my throat had finally come in, and I was able to do the more vocally intensive stuff. If you have not heard it, one of the songs that I get the most comments from, there's 2 of them actually, but one of them I get the most comments from is Our Sanctuary. And that's in that second playlist. I think it's in the first one too, but somebody asked me to add it to the second one, so I did. I put it at the bottom. But anyways, Raven Kiefer Live Round 1, Raven Kiefer Live Round 2, and Raven Kiefer Live Round 3. Round 3 is all rock and roll, you all. I started out with the song that I did it's called Out of the Dark, and I've always liked like Green Eyed Lady and Love Potion Number 9, Long Cool Woman in a Black Dress. I've always loved those songs, and I always tried to figure out a way to do something that was complementary to those, but was a tribute to the original rock, So Out of the Dark is like a British invasion song. As a matter of fact, it's a tribute to Ringo Starr's drumming. Plus, it has that British invasion rock sound to it. And that's where I started at. And then I came through the progressive rock in the 70s, and then the indie alternative. And anyway, so the third set is all rock and roll of various kinds. There's even the country rock song, Farm Raised Good Men. Everybody says that's F-A-F-O. But anyway, so if you want my music, I got the 3 live shows. And then I got all my albums. You can listen to them anywhere you stream music. All right. I'm working on 2 more right now. One at a time, but I'm working on 2 more right now. Because I finally we had some kind of folks, and I'm sorry, some of them videos that went up on YouTube look a little bit dark, and one of them looks like it's washed out. We had a formatting problem, and I don't know what it was. It was a corrupted file. And I did what I could in order to get the video up so people could, and one of them's really dark. It's hard to see me. I think a couple of them are really dark, hard to see me. And one of them's kind of washed out. Like, I don't know what happened, but I put it up there anyway because I wanted everybody to have that full set. Interesting too. Somebody tried to copyright strike me on my own music. I own 200% of the right. It's a different way that they figure it. Okay. But when you are the sole composer, the sole writer, it's 200% for the writing credit, right? I got 200% of the writing credit. I got 100% of the production credit and 100% of the performance credit. I own every bit of my music outright. I own everything. Nobody has any part, piece, parcel, or percentage other than me. Okay? And it was registered. I always register my music at BMI before I ever even set up the album to be released. Okay? The minute the song is done and I have it, and I'm getting the set list put together for the album, as soon as I have the album's order figured out, because I'll listen to it for that one album, I listened to it for 2 weeks before I got the order of the music the way I'm an old guy. I like to do album style music. I want that album to flow Okay. So I will listen to it until I get the play order the way I want it on the album. Then it's already registered. Every one of them songs, when they're finished, are registered at BMI. Then I submit it to my distributor. Okay? Before as soon as I have all the tracks, say there's 13 tracks on an album. As soon as I have all 13 tracks, I have the length, I have the title, right? I register them with BMI. That's the first thing I do when I have the whole album mastered, right? I register with BMI. Then I submit the album to my distributor. That way I'm protected before that music ever gets anywhere. Yet somebody tried to copyright strike me on my own song. And I informed YouTube that whoever this is needs to be fined. They need to be sanctioned. And they need to be warned. Because all it took was less than 20 hours to go to BMI and see who owned that music. To make a claim on my music, they're lucky I don't sue them. Seriously. Because that flat out, making a claim on my music makes them open to suit. Making false statements that could cost me money. So there's a warning to anybody else who thinks they're going to copyright claim my music. Told you they made me mad. I put a post up on YouTube. I said, man, they ticked me off. Anyway, so there's that. If you want my music, I got the live round 1, live round 2, live round 3 on YouTube. It's video segments from the shows. And I did them in segments, and I'll tell you why I did them in segments. First of all, you don't need to hear me BSing and having fun with people in between sets. Second thing is I had some issues with equipment on all 3 shows that made me have to stop. Third thing is on the third show, the live round 3, my phone kept ringing even though I had it shut off. No kidding. I'm sitting there trying to sing and my phone is vibrating in my back pocket. You talk about making you... And I shut it off. And we'd get going and we did a couple of songs and next thing you know, it's ringing again. Not ringing out loud, but vibrating. You know, that was weird, trying to sing with that thing going off in my pocket. It's like, how? Okay. We're going to spend the next 20 minutes, and I'm going to go through this as fast as I can, you all. All right? This is the Epstein file stuff. All right? Maybe somebody who listens to this will give you a timestamp, but this is the Epstein. Okay. Let's see, where am I going to start at? I had all kinds of notes here. Okay. Just because we know the lies. This is an old saying, and I can't remember who said it. I've adapted it for myself. But just because we know the lies, these can be proven. Right? You can prove a lie. Just because we know the lies, because these can be proven, does not mean that we know the truth. Because that is not so easily proven. And don't hold me to it, but I think the original from this was, I want to give credit where I'm pretty sure it was Samuel Clemens, Mark Twain. Just because we know the lies, these can be proven, does not mean that we know the truth. That is not so easily proven. What we're getting with the Epstein files are layers that are like an onion. And they're peeling away the layers of the onion, right? The problem is we should be looking over here at the garlic. I'm just saying, you know, they got us peeling. They're giving us the layers of the onion. They're peeling the layers of the onion away because they don't want us looking at the garlic. And the garlic has many nodes, right? Garlic has more than one clove, right? And some of those are true. Some of them are half true, and some of them are just outright lies. But the trick is they got you looking at the onion being peeled back instead of looking at the garlic. How's that for an analogy? I have to tell you something, and you might want to look this up. You remember the Alex Pretty, Alex Pretty, Pretti? Alex Pretty that was killed, quote unquote, in Minnesota? You might want to look up a guy whose name is Malkai. It's Malkia Gross, Gross. He's an IDF individual. But Alex Preddy, you might type it in that way. Type in Alex Preddy Malkai Gross. It's Malkia, right? Because just because you might want to look it up. Let's see, the Guthrie thing. You all been watching the Guthrie kidnapping and all the crap that's going on with that? See, I got a lot of stuff I'm throwing at you, but it's all related. It's all related to the Epstein issue. So you got this Guthrie kidnapping, right? Well, her husband's name was Fellman, Fellman. He created a company called Grover Park. Do you know what the Guthrie Fellman family did? They were the Bill and Hillary Clinton scrubbers. Their job was to go on the internet and eliminate anything that the Clintons did not want to be seen. And now you've got the Clintons, quote unquote, testifying. And all of a sudden we have this issue with Miss Guthrie. Oh. Right? I did a podcast a long time ago and I said, you have facts. All right. Any one of you and I can agree on a set of facts. All right. Raven is a billionaire. Raven drives a Ferrari anytime he wants. He has a Lamborghini. He has a Porsche. He has a $500 million home. We can agree on those facts, right? But they're not true. Until we decide that that's the truth, right? If we all decide that that is the truth, Raven is a billionaire and he has a $500 million home, that's the truth. We've agreed upon it. But truth and facts are both valid and invalid. You can use a whole set of invalid facts, and if enough people agree upon it to be true, then that becomes the truth. There's a huge difference between truth, facts, and valid and invalid today. All right, so next thing, let's see. The drama that we're seeing. You know, they're putting out all this horrible stuff, and dude, it's horrible. But here's the interesting thing to me. You ready? All this drama about, you know, and don't get me wrong, it's horrible stuff. But it hides three things that are, to me, more important. Don't get me wrong, it's some of it's just god awful. I mean, it's horrible. But Epstein flat out said, I work for the Rothschilds. More than once. Well, who are the Rothschilds? You've heard me talk about them with Patrick. You've heard me talk about them with, I can't remember how many guests I've had on that we've talked about the Rothschilds in the banking industry. You know, I mean, Jonah and I talked about how the foundation of the World Bank was done with stolen bullion from the restoration money for Europe. Anyway, so we know that Epstein was connected to the Rothschilds. He said flat out, I worked for him. We also know that the Rothschilds, because of Epstein files, we know that the Rothschilds were behind the 2014 coup in Ukraine. We also know that the Epstein Foundation owns about 75% of the code for Bitcoin, which means it's the Rothschilds that own Bitcoin. We also know that Bitcoin is a laundering system for black projects. Black projects being anything they don't want you to know about, like the coup in Ukraine, like the genocide in Sudan, like the crimes against humanity in Yemen, or I'm sorry, Ethiopia, right? Like the attack on the Balkan states in Eastern Europe. Now, that means that the Rothschilds was, and here's the thing people aren't picking up on. Epstein was a money launderer. Okay? He was a money launderer. So they're using this money to create NGOs like Bill Gates NGO, Soros NGO, various Rothschild NGOs, Ellison NGOs. They're hiding political structure behind NGOs, and the money is being laundered, so it can't be tracked, right? So Epstein for years is behind the creation of NGOs, non-government organizations, to affect desired outcomes in various places, with the added bonus of hiding real income, like Bill Gates, like George Soros. I'm going as fast as I can, all right? Then you got Danny Rothschild, okay? Danny Rothschild is the real head of the Israeli intelligence. Y'all know this, right? Danny Rothschild is the real head of Israeli intelligence, and he is directly connected to Epstein. Then you got Breitbart, Charlie Kirk, TPUSA, and all the individuals in TPUSA are all tied to Epstein. Why? Because of the money laundering. Right? You got Donald Barr out of the Ukraine, right? He was Epstein's handler for a long time. They want to return the land from the Baltic to the Black Sea to the hands of the Khazars. You realize the Ukraine used to be called Khazaria, and that's not a fiction, that's a fact. The Khazars lived in the Ukraine. The Russians came in from the north, and the Persians, Iran, came in from the south and crushed them because they were criminals. They were murderers. They were assassins. They were thieves. And they were killing, you had the east-west trade route that went through there. They were killing real tradesmen and real merchants, stealing their stuff, jacking up the prices, stealing their names, and then moving it into Russia and Persia and selling it and infiltrating the merchants there. So Russia came down from the north. Russia came down from the north. Persia came up from the south, and they obliterated them, drove them out of Khazaria into Europe. The ones that escaped, anyway. Just giving you history. Anyway, so Donald Barr, who is from Ukraine, was Epstein's handler for a long time. Okay? And he has said that they are going to get everything from the Baltic to the Black Sea returned to them. Hence the coup in Ukraine in 2014. You also need to know that you have Oxford University. Rhodes, Clintons, others. I got to point out something else, too, that has to do with this. The universities in the United States are no longer battlegrounds on ideas or intellectualism. The universities in the United States are no longer a political, social, or philosophical battleground. They are communist. 99% of them, y'all. The Ellison takeover of CBS and TikTok is directly connected to WEF, World Economic Forum, and Davos, and the Rothschilds. CBS, TikTok, and you have to know something. Musk would not have X/Twitter if he wasn't allowed. Something else I want to point out to you, because really Palestine and the little British protectorate set in the middle of Phoenicia, okay? Phoenicia. That's what it is. It was never Palestine. It was never Israel. It was Phoenicia. And by the way, the word phony comes from Phoenicia. Doge, right? Musk's little investigation into economic bullshit. Doge was the elimination of competition for the NGOs that are being controlled by the bankers and the money launderers and the black projects, all right? It was elimination of competition and consolidation of control. Okay. And that includes you said. You said had too many hands. You said. They used to call it USAID. That's bull crap. It's USAID. You said. You said what? But that includes you said. They wanted to eliminate you said and all the hands that were there and consolidated under other NGOs that they had more control over. All right. And had less answerability for. You said could be investigated here in the United States if people demanded it. Whereas the NGOs have protections that are unlawful according to international law. But anyway, so I managed to do all that in an hour and 5 minutes. My comedy is the Raven Kiefer Laugh Podcast wherever you stream. My home is Spreaker. Spreaker, SPREA. It's like speaker with an R in it. Spreaker. SPREAKER.com. Raven Kiefer. My Laugh Podcast are there. My No Apologies Enough Said podcast are there. And my interviews are there. My music is on YouTube and anywhere you stream. So if you want to see the live shows, it's Raven Kiefer live round 1, live round 2, live round 3, and it's me and a Raven, or it's me and me in a boxing ring. All right. The albums will be out soon too. Live round 1 album gets released on the weekend of Valentine's Day. And then live round 2 album will get released in March, and round number 3 album will get released in April. So a month apart. Anyway, and then you can see my ugly mug singing on YouTube. I also have the comedy clips and shows playlist on YouTube, which is me face to face with you all doing comedy. So I appreciate y'all. And somebody asked me to do this, so I'm doing it. And if I get more information, I'll drop more information on you. But I don't jump to conclusions, and I don't get into the dramatic and the fantastic. I get into what are they trying to hide. If I'm showing you this hand, what am I doing over here? Right. So the reason why I use the onions and garlic analogy. By the way, I'm going to be on Forbidden Knowledge News with Chris on the 11th, and we're going to be talking about all kinds of stuff. And it should air on YouTube. I'll put it in my podcast playlists if he airs it on YouTube. But it's Forbidden Knowledge News with Chris Matthew, and I'll be on that on the 11th. What else? Ryder Lee over at Raised by Giants is somebody that you might want to check out. Let's see. Redacted. Daniel Davis, Deep Dive. Anything with Colonel McGregor on it. Anything with Colonel Wilkerson on it. Lawrence Wilkerson and Doug McGregor. Dialogue Works is the channel on YouTube with Nima. Trying to think of some of the other people. Judge Knapp. I mean, I don't always agree with everybody he has on there, but Judge Napolitano has some fantastic guests like Max Blumenthal and Aaron Mate and Professor Morandi. Folks, you got to find different sources if you want to get real information. You know, I listen to all this stuff at 3 and 4X anyway. But anyway, Mahe and Favour, nothing missing, nothing broken, nothing absent from your lives that are needed. And thanks for spending an hour with me. I'm trying to get a comedy show put together, and I'll probably record it like this if I can. Should be able to. It's just cold. So I'll figure out something for you. That being said, y'all, Mahe and Favour, nothing missing, nothing broken, nothing absent from your lives that are needed. And propaganda rules the airwaves these days, y'all.